Is Rick Warren fine? People ask that question in whispers now, because ever since April 5, 2013, the day his world collapsed, Rick hasn't been the same. And maybe he never will be. This is the part of his story most people don't understand. Long before grief consumed him, long before he buried his son, Rick Warren had already been broken in public more times than anyone realized. Back in 2006, Saddleback Church was growing at rocket speed. Rick's name spread across the country, but fame isn't free. Pastors copied his purpose-driven model, and churches split because of it. Friends turned on each other. Congregations argued until people walked out forever. Rick watched churches tear themselves apart using principles he created. And even though he warned pastors not to force anything, he still carried the guilt. Imagine knowing that something you built helped thousands thrive, and at the same time destroyed places of worship you never even visited. Then came 2008, the Obama inauguration. The president-elect invited Rick to give the opening prayer. It should have been an honor, but it triggered a national firestorm. A private letter to his church surfaced his biblical belief that marriage was between a man and a woman. Overnight, Rick went from beloved pastor to controversial figure. Protesters demanded he be removed. Headlines called him hateful. The strangest part, just months before, he'd been openly working with people in the LGBTQ community through Saddleback's AIDS ministry, hugging the sick, caring for families. None of that mattered. America wanted a target. Even fellow evangelicals attacked him, accusing him of being too soft, too friendly, too open. No matter what Rick said, he angered someone. No matter what he did, someone felt betrayed. Still, nothing prepared him for what came next. Matthew Warren was only 7 when doctors diagnosed him with clinical depression. A child who could barely reach the kitchen counter was suddenly labeled with a condition most adults can't handle. And yet the signs had been there for years. Matthew had a gift, their ability to spot the person in the room who was hurting most. He felt other people's pain instinctively, maybe because he recognized it. He lived with it himself every day. Rick described his son as gentle, brilliant, compassionate. But behind closed doors, the reality was darker. Endless doctor appointments, medications that failed, therapies that led nowhere, nights filled with panic attacks and fear. Matthew once asked his father why nothing worked, why every professional, every treatment, every prayer changed nothing inside his brain. And at 17, he asked the question no parent ever wants to hear: why can't I just die and go to heaven? Rick begged him not to give up, tried to believe that anything might still help. Matthew survived another 10 years after that conversation. 10 years of trying. 10 years of pain, so relentless it eventually suffocated him. On April 5, 2013, the Warrens spent a warm, happy evening together. They laughed, they talked. Matthew seemed lighter. That's the cruel trick of depression, it hides right before it kills. The next morning, Matthew made a choice his family will carry for the rest of their lives. He went to his home in Mission Viejo and shot himself with an unregistered gun he'd illegally purchased online. Rick later tweeted forgiveness for the person who sold it, quoting scripture about forgiving others so God can forgive you. But on that day, there was only shock, only devastation, only a father identifying his son's body. Within minutes, Rick and Kay's small group rushed to the house. They didn't ask permission. They didn't knock. They just came, held them, and stayed. That night they slept on the Warrens' floors, refusing to leave them alone. After decades of guiding people through their darkest nights, Rick could barely stand through his own. When he finally told Saddleback what happened, he wrote that no words can express the anguished grief we feel. He explained Matthew's suffering, his brilliance, his kindness, and the lifelong battle that never eased. People around America reacted, some with sympathy, others with cruelty. Some asked how a man who helped millions find purpose couldn't save his own son. Others said it was punishment. Rick ignored most of it. He stepped away from preaching for 4 months, disappearing into silence and sorrow. When he finally returned, he wasn't the same. He was softer, more fragile. He cried easily. He understood suffering in a way he never had before, because now he knew what it felt like to bury a child. His sermons shifted. His priorities shifted. He and Kay launched mental health ministries, formed partnerships, hosted conferences, began speaking openly about the shame and stigma surrounding mental illness. Rick repeated one line everywhere he went: your chemistry is not your character. Your illness is not your identity. He started receiving thousands of letters from people Matthew had helped in quiet ways. People he encouraged, people he prayed for, people he comforted, even while his own pain was eating him alive. Rick wrote in his journal that in God's garden, even broken trees bear fruit. It became the sentence he used to survive the day. Even now, Rick hasn't stopped. In 2024 and 2025, he continued preaching, writing, teaching, traveling, leading global initiatives, launching ministries, mentoring pastors, giving away most of his income. But when the crowds went home and the conferences ended, the grief was still there. He said openly that he still cries for Matthew every single day. He says grief isn't weakness, it's love with nowhere to go. He tries to help others with their pain, even while carrying his own. He says he still feels doubt every Monday morning after preaching. wondering if someone else could have done better. He says God never gives you more than he puts inside you to handle, but some days even he doesn't know if that's true. He believes Matthew is whole, now, healed, free, that someday they'll see each other again. That belief is the thread he clings to when nothing else makes sense. But grief like his never disappears. It becomes a scar that never stops aching. So, is Rick Warren fine? He's functioning, he's serving, he's leading, he's helping millions. But fine. No, not in the way people mean. He is a man who carries the weight of his son's pain every moment of every day. A father who still wonders if he could have done more. A pastor who preaches hope while quietly learning to live with heartbreak. A man forever changed by April 5, 2013. Rick Warren is not fine. He is surviving. In some days, that is its own kind of miracle.